Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everybody. We are up to 1,608 solo shots on the season. That is absolutely insane. We've been getting over 100 almost every single week. Follow me on TikTok at Solo Shot Sports for the daily updates that got us to that number. And happy Bobby Bonilla Day, everybody. The MLB payday is set at July 1st, which this podcast happened to fall on today. And Bobby Bonilla will be getting paid $1.19 million from the Mets. He's been getting that from 2011 all the way till 2035. It's just a great time to be him. He hasn't played for the Mets since 1999. And part of that $360 million payroll that has been going down the drain this season is for Bobby Bonilla. You see this across the league. The Cincinnati Reds' third highest paid player this season is Ken Griffey Jr., who has not played for them since the early 2000s. But Bobby Bonilla is one of the most insane contract situations in baseball history, and it's always a landmark for the halfway point of the Major League Baseball season. Every team has played at least 81 games. Most teams are on 84, 85 games, heading towards the All-Star break next weekend. And it's just been an amazing season so far. Bobby Bonilla has always been a talk of contract woes and these big contracts not working out. But there's been plenty of contracts that have and will work out in the future. But Bobby Bonilla, you get that bag today. Always fun to think of you on July 1st. And I won't be messing around today. Halfway point check-in is our first base. The standings right now, if you look at them, are just monstrous for some of these teams down below. You'll see my power rankings. And the Tampa Bay Rays have been proving me wrong all season long. Best record in baseball all season. They've been fantastic. Congratulations on Yandy Diaz for being the starter at first base like I predicted. He was saying that when he came over from Cuba, that he truly just wanted to start his life over. He didn't think that he'd even make a Major League Baseball team, but he wanted a better life for himself, let alone making an all-star appearance as a starter. And if the Rays were going to have starters, it had to be Yandy Diaz, Randy Arozarena, players of that caliber, because they platoon so many other positions. Happy for Yandy Diaz in the Rays. But they have been followed closely by the Baltimore Orioles. Unfortunately, Adley Rutschman was not able to duel out Jonah Heim and those Texas Rangers supporters during the All-Star voting. But I believe he'll still be an All-Star. You look at the Baltimore Orioles, who in their own right are fantastic, 48-win team. I'm hoping that they add before the August 1st trade deadline. This team where you have a young catcher, Gunnar Henderson, the top third baseman that was supposed to be rookie of the year to start the season, is finally hitting. You've been getting surprisingly good outings out of Tyler Wells. Fantastic stuff across the board. And honestly, it is just amazing to watch these O's. They're a very fun team. If anybody is going to catch the runaway train that is the Tampa Bay Rays, it is going to be the Baltimore Orioles, most likely with the addition of a pitcher, whether that is a Lucas Giolito type or a rental that turns into a guy who starts playoff games for those O's. The Yankees have not been the same since Aaron Judge fell out of track and has now a torn ligament in his toe. They don't know if he's going to miss weeks or if he's going to miss the rest of the season. Without Aaron Judge in the lineup, this Yankees team is a fringe playoff team. I had them in the playoffs as the first wild card because with Aaron Judge, with the signing of Carlos Rodon, who has not pitched yet, I assumed that this team that's always with a winning record is going to be well within playoff range. Now they're going to be borderline playoff range. They need Anthony Rizzo and Giancarlo Stanton and Gleyber Torres to all step up. There's been a lot of mental errors, but this team still has a winning record despite all these faults and all these injuries, 45-36. They're, of course, going to try to add at the trade deadline. They don't have a lot of cap flexibility. They're already over the luxury tax. The New York Yankees are not the Yankees of old. They should not be favored in this division as Toronto continues to go for it, as Baltimore has fast forwarded through their rebuild and Tampa Bay is continually good. My Red Sox aren't the worst team in baseball, and they're in last place. So this division is very tough. It's no longer the Yankees or who else. The Yankees are in trouble this season, but I still think that they are well in the playoff picture, especially if Aaron Judge is able to come back from that unfortunate toe injury. Talking about the Toronto Blue Jays, Alek Manoah got absolutely swamped in his first start in rookie ball when he was facing 18 and 19-year-olds. He gave up 11 earned runs, and that is just unbelievable. A guy who was top 3 in Cy Young voting last season, who was supposed to take a step forward. A lot of people picked him for the Cy Young. I didn't pick him for the Cy Young, but I thought he would be top 5 or 6 or so in the American League. And he just completely has fallen apart. I don't know if it's a confidence thing, if it's a physical ailment or injury, or if the pitch clock has really altered the way that he works and he is just not clicking with the new rules. Regardless, he's down in the minor leagues. I doubt we see him again this season unless the Blue Jays have a litany of injuries to that pitching staff. And what do the Blue Jays do? Do they stay with Kevin Gausman and Chris Bassett in this rotation, or do they try to add and push even further in to this team that they've been building with the hopes to bring another championship to Toronto? George Springer, Kevin Kiermaier, Whit Merrifield, Matt Chapman in a contract year. You have these guys that are aging, and you got this window where Guerrero and Bichette are both cheap and in their prime. You have to figure things out if you're Toronto. Alejandro Kirk has not been his all-star self so far to start the season. He's been good, but not great. Him and Danny Jansen is a good catching duo. But the Toronto Blue Jays, again, a team that had high expectations. I picked them to win the division, but it looks like they are going to be fighting for third place in the division with the New York Yankees. And that's very unfortunate. I don't think that this team should be counted out. I think if any team has the talent to go on a run in the second half and make some noise, it is the Toronto Blue Jays. But from what I've seen through halfway this season, this is about what they are. They're a third or fourth place team in a good division. If they were in one of these central divisions, they'd be running away with it. The Boston Red Sox, I knew this was a retooling year. I was thanking the stars that Rafael Devers got extended before the season started, so I didn't have to worry about that. Brian Bayo, 7 no-hit innings, no run support. Red Sox lose. Trevor Story still not back from his injury that we were expecting to be back around now. The Red Sox, I'm not counting them completely out. Any team can go on a run, especially if the pitching and offense click at the same time. But I'm just hoping in the second half to see a lot of Tristan Casas, a lot of Brian Bayo, a lot of these young players that have been platooning with the Justin Turners and Adam Duvals of the world, been up and down to give James Paxton, who was brilliant the other night, or Corey Kluber starts. Like, don't worry about those guys if they continue to fall out of the division race. Let the young kids play and see what you got going into 2024. The National League East, the Philadelphia Phillies went on an absolute run. Completely great baseball. They gained 0 ground in the standings because the Braves are one of the best teams in baseball. And the Miami Marlins, one of the surprises of this year, have also been fantastic. Yuri Perez, 20 years old, pitching like an ace. Sandy Alcantara has been struggling. He's probably been their 3rd or 4th best pitcher this season. It is insane. Luis Arraez came into Fenway Park, hitting around 400. Makes you think of Ted Williams, of course, the last player to hit 400. Really fun team in the NL East there. The Braves are boringly good. Ronald Acuna is the first player in baseball history to have 20 home runs and 35 RBIs going into the All-Star break. Mind you, there are still games before the All-Star break, but it is just unbelievable to me that Ronald Acuna, when he's healthy, he's playing like this. It's part of the reason that I've always said that Ronald Acuna should fire and sue his agent for making him sign that deal. It was just too low of a price for someone with his talent. But when he's healthy, we saw in 2021, the Braves won the whole thing without him. Now he's at the height of his powers. I don't see this Braves train slowing down for anybody. The Phillies have put themselves back in wildcard contention. The Marlins are continuing to impress. A team that always sells at the deadline. I expect them to at least stand pat, if not buy. But once we get past the Marlins and the Phillies, the teams that are winning and trying to win from all intents and purposes, you have the New York Mets, the team that I talked about with the Bobby Bonilla section earlier in this episode. They are paying almost $360 million to have the worst record in the NL in the month of June, 7-19. They trade Eduardo Escobar for a few prospects. I expect them to actually look to sell at this deadline, not completely sell, but a lot of these older players, Starling Marte types, they are going to be shopped around because you cannot justify this payroll for this performance. That's part of the problem that I've seen with free agency. You see these big contracts being handed out and they're saying, oh, well, if you want this money, we have to expand it over these amount of years. And you're really hurting your long-term team construction. You only got 26 spots on the roster and you have to be flexible. When you're locking yourself into all these big money deals and you're paying over the luxury tax, you have to be smart with your money. You can't just throw it around. Carlos Correa did this team a favor. Imagine if Carlos Correa was on this team's payroll with that contract that he was offered by the Mets. It would be an even bigger disaster. Steve Cohen, I think his passion and want to win is good for baseball, but the execution just has not been there. Mets fans, I feel for you. You go through stuff like this every season, but now that you're spending this kind of money that can set your team back years, it's a real shame. You see the Marlins are ahead of you with a minuscule payroll. The Phillies, who are doing your same thing, but with a little bit less money spent, are ahead of you. And the Braves have locked up all their pieces for the next 7 years on very reasonable contracts. It is just not a good time to be a Mets fan. There's been speculation that Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander could lift their no trade clause to go to a contender. That would be really interesting to see. if a Justin Verlander Houston reunion happens, or a Max Scherzer back to the Arizona Diamondbacks who need a pitcher. He started his career there. Stuff like that could be very interesting, but this Mets team, that's about all it is a big sack of money that's been pouring down the drain all season. Lindor, Alonso, those are the two guys that for sure you should be building this team around. After that, if it's not working and you spending this money, I wouldn't blame them at all for shaking things up. The Washington Nationals, I've had them in my bottom 5 all season, but I have to say I've been impressed. They're better than I thought they would be. They are top 10 in the league in batting average and bottom 5 in the league in strikeouts. They have potential to build up another playoff caliber team of young studs like they did in 2019. I'm not saying it's going to happen in the next 5 years, but so far, so good for Nats fans. Hang in there. Going to the Central, the worst divisions in sports. The Cincinnati Reds have been a machine. We talked about their historic winning streak of 12 games and how they played one of the best games of the season against the Braves, how that was an amazing game, 11-10 final score in extra innings. Elly De La Cruz has been amazing. Joey Votto just played his 2,000th career game, only the 4th active player to do so. But the Cincinnati Reds, as good as they are, they're an overachiever. Nobody expected them to be here. This is a team that people expected to sell some of these veterans at the deadline, like Jonathan India and Will Myers. You can't sell these guys now. Alexis Diaz could have gotten them a haul if they weren't winning games. But this team, if anything, they're going to have to make some small buys. They're going to have to try to say, what position on our team is the weakest and who can we get as a rental to add to this team and really push for the postseason. The Pirates started off so hot. They were the story of baseball. An electric walk-off by Carlos Santana last night with the dance and all and those ugly City Connect uniforms that the Pirates have. I'm sorry, Pittsburgh fans. Love your uniforms, just not those. And you look at Milwaukee. They've just been towards the top the entire season, a team that I was really pushing to put over St. Louis, but I couldn't because of my biases and what I saw from St. Louis last year. Milwaukee's been in it the whole time. They still have the best odds to win that division because they have the pitching, because they have offense. Garrett Mitchell's been down. Joey Wiemer's been fantastic in his place. This Brewers team, they have been favored. I think they will continue to be favored. And if any team is going to add significantly at the deadline, I would say it's the Brewers. I don't think Pittsburgh or Cincinnati's ownership will go too big this deadline, but they also won't sell, which is teams that were expected to sell at the beginning of the season this time of year. And then we get down to the Cubs and the Cardinals. I will cover their London series at the end of the show because that had its own issue. But these are two teams that were expected to be better this season than they were last year. Two teams that have underperformed, two teams that are expected to sell veteran pieces. It's a shame. They're two of the oldest organizations in the sport. Really good players on both teams, including Nolan Arenado getting voted into his 8th All-Star game. But things haven't clicked for those two teams. And honestly, it would be cool if one of them got back into the race in this division, but I'm not seeing it at this point. As a baseball fan, I'd rather a Pittsburgh or a Cincinnati, who doesn't get in the postseason as often, win that division. But we'll see what happens the rest of the way. The Central divisions, teams aren't necessarily out, but how in are they? That's the real question when it comes to the Central divisions. And I believe that if these divisions stay down this track the next couple of years, when baseball looks to expand, it could turn into an East-West thing in each league and eliminate the Central divisions altogether. Because you look at the AL Central, the Twins and Guardians have been right at the top. Really good teams that were expected to hit better than they are, but are both pitching about as expected. The Twins actually better than expected. Those two teams are the teams to look at in the AL Central. Not saying that the Tigers or White Sox can't go on a run and catch them. They're within striking distance. I just don't expect them to. And the Royals, just like the Cardinals, they've been in last place pretty much the whole season. They have some young players that they can build around, but they've already sold off Aroldis Chapman. I expect them to sell off Scott Barlow and some of their other vets that they can sell. And now we're finally at the West divisions, which, in my opinion, are maybe the best top to bottom. The Dodgers I've had ahead of the Diamondbacks all season in my power rankings, despite the Diamondbacks being in first place more of the season. And it's because they have all these injuries. They have underperforming. They've lost players. Clayton Kershaw, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. They're going to figure it out. I've been saying it all season. And they've just stayed right there as a good team. They've had young players come up and help them. Max Muncy has carried the offense at times. But this team, it really, those three guys, both culturally and performance on the field, they're just carrying this team. This culture has not wavered. No matter how many injuries, no matter how many stinky performances, they are just going in and taking care of business every day. And I just can't count them out for that. The Diamondbacks have been fantastic. Corbin Carroll, amazing story. Before the season starts, getting that $100 million extension. Not just being a Rookie of the Year candidate, which he always was, but being a legit MVP candidate and getting voted in to start an All-Star game in his first year in his hometown city of Seattle. He is electric, a true superstar in the making. The Diamondbacks are, I think, going to be hurt by losing Merrill Kelly on the IL with a clotting issue. I hope that everything's okay with him. We've seen people come back in a couple weeks from that, but we've seen more serious health issues arise as well, so prayers up to him. Zach Gallen, true ace. Lourdes Gurriel, probably still going to be an all-star, but didn't get the vote. This team's very good. Top to bottom, they're using the new rules to their advantage, the speed, the defense, the base running. But this team, as good as it is, if they don't add another legit starting pitcher, I can't consider putting them ahead of the Dodgers as currently constructed. Like, this team, it has Gallen. It will hopefully have Merrill. But after that, if they don't go out there and make a move for a Scherzer or a Stroman or a Giolito or a Shane Bieber, if Cleveland decides to give up on him, I don't know if the Diamondbacks can make a legit run. I'm not saying they can't win a playoff series, but go on the run to win the whole thing. I think they're a pitcher away, as good as they've been during the regular season. The San Francisco Giants have been an amazing story as of late. Another team that's just boring. They platoon a lot of positions, and they got a lot of older guys that aren't superstars, but they just get the job done. Really good baseball team, and they're going to be in it the whole year. But the team that really is frustrating in this NL West is the San Diego Padres. They're a team that's been a top 5 pitching team, a top 5 defensive team, surprisingly, with Bogarts coming over and Tatis playing outfield for the first time. They've been a top 5 defensive team. What has the Padres' problem been? The hitting. Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis hitting very well. Manny Machado started slow, starting to hit. Xander Bogaerts started hot, starting to slow down. But it's everybody else on this team. Grisham, Ha-Seong Kim, like these guys that are just filling in Cronenworth, like they're not getting the job done consistently. And this team that was called Slam Diego and also has a massive payroll, and they're kind of locked into this core. The only players from this core they can really get rid of if they want to sell are Blake Snell, who has been absolutely filthy in Cy Young form the last 6 starts, and Juan Soto, who is still very young and very deserving of a contract extension, been probably your best hitter all season. The Padres, I don't know how they don't make a run in the second half, whether they add or not. They just have the talent to make a run, and unlike the Mets, I don't think they're as bad as their record. But it's very tough when you see the Dodgers are always good. The Diamondbacks are much improved. The Giants are very good as usual. And you have an uphill battle the second half of the season. I'm hoping that they can go on a run and really push for the postseason because they have some real superstars that can make October a lot of fun. And finally, the AL West. I've talked glowingly about Marcus Semien, the Texas Rangers. Thank you to all of you that have helped vote him into the All-Star game. But the Texas Rangers, they've been in first place. I finally have put them ahead of Houston because they have the pitching and hitting that I deem necessary to do so. But Houston's right there. Framber Valdez, my Cy Young pick, has been very good. Altuve came back with a home run yesterday. Alvarez will hopefully be back soon. They're very good. They have the experience, both managing and on the field. I expect Houston to still be in it. Then you got the Angels and the man Shohei Ohtani that I will talk about in just a second. Angels have been better than everyone thought. They're ahead of Oakland, of course, but they've been ahead of Seattle, the team that is hosting the All-Star game, the team that was making their first playoff appearance in almost 20 years last season. And they've just completely flopped. They're not hitting. Their pitching has been average when it was supposed to be the strength of the team. That team's going to have to sell, and it's a real shame. You don't want to host the All-Star weekend and have like one or two All-Stars and be selling off pieces. You want to be contending on the top of the world with a bunch of home All-Stars. Julio Rodriguez hopefully wins the home run derby to give them something to cheer about. But this team is in a lot of trouble. Now, speaking of Shohei Ohtani, because he is superhuman, speeding things up here, his month of June was incredible. Just in his last week, on Monday, he took the MLB lead in home runs with 26. On Tuesday, he pitched 6 1/3 innings of one-run baseball with 10 Ks, and he hit 2 home runs. Wednesday, 5 at-bats, 3 hits, and he tied the MLB lead in triples. On Thursday, he hit home run 29, which set the single-month home run franchise record at 14. And then last night, he hit his 15th home run of the month of June, 493-foot solo shot swag, longest home run in Major League Baseball, and making him the first player in baseball to 30 home runs. In 84 games played, he has 30 home runs, same as Aaron Judge during his record-breaking season last year. Will Shohei Ohtani have the same contract year where he breaks the American League home run record? Only time will tell, but we are blessed to be watching him. A true ace with 50 home run power. You only can make that in a lab. So appreciate Shohei Ohtani, and I'm really excited to watch him just continue to blaze. The Angels aren't selling him. He's going to have to walk in free agency, and I think if the Angels miss the playoffs, that is a certainty, not an if. As we round third base here on the podcast, I like to throw it back to a day in Major League history where July 1st of whatever year, something amazing happened or a Hall of Famer was involved. And there's a lot of great stuff actually for July 1st, it being that midway point. The first college baseball game ever was played in 1859 with Amherst defeating Williams College 73-32. That's an insane baseball score. Walter Johnson no-hit my Red Sox on this day in 1920. And debuts of stars like Roy Campanella and Whitey Ford happened on July 1st. Just amazing stuff. Top to bottom, Luis Aparicio with his 500th career stolen base. But truly, a game that I was not even familiar with till researching. On July 1st, 1934, at Cincinnati's Crosley Field, the St. Louis Cardinals beat the Cincinnati Reds 8-6 in 18 innings. Cardinal hurler Dizzy Dean got the win, defeating Tony Freitas in a game which each starting pitcher threw 17 innings and had 17 strikeouts. Yes, I know they gave up more runs, but when you talk about the greatest games ever pitched, everyone points to the 1963 matchup of a 42-year-old Warren Spahn versus a young Juan Marichal, which was ended by a Willie Mays home run. They both went 16 innings. To go 17 innings in a baseball game, it's unheard of. I couldn't find the actual pitch counts from the game, but I would assume they're monstrous. For those of you that aren't familiar with Dizzy Dean, definitely look up his baseball reference page. He was Sandy Koufax before Sandy Koufax. He was the peak Hall of Fame pitcher, guy that just dominated for a short period of time. And even in a game where him and the pitching staff give up 6 runs, going 17 innings, striking out 17 batters, we will never see stuff like that today. You can only read about it. And that is just unbelievable. Wanted to give some love to Dizzy Dean, the dead ball era near the Depression, 1934. So definitely go check out Dizzy Dean's baseball reference page if you have not done it already. And finally, Waino sinking with the ship. I talked about the Cardinals playing the Cubs in London last weekend. Told you guys to check it out. Waino got shelled yet again. He is 2 wins away from 200 in his career. It's one of the main reasons he played baseball this season instead of retiring with Yachty and Albert last season. Nobody could have expected the Cardinals to be this bad. Some people could have predicted regression. Some people could have predicted the Brewers to win the division over the Cardinals. But nobody expected the Cardinals to be in last place for over 70% of the first half of the season. This Cardinals team, it's bad. There's no sugarcoating it. Goldschmidt and Arenado, they're good. They're not as good as they were last year, where they finished first and third in MVP voting. But all that aside, this Cardinal ship is sinking. A lot of people are thinking that they're going to sell pieces and rebuild and retool for next season, or to push for this season, just get some new faces and new culture in the building. But I look at Adam Wainwright, a guy who started off as a reliever and has played his whole career with the St. Louis Cardinals. And I don't know if he needs a phantom IL stint. I don't know if he needs something of that matter, but he's sinking with this ship. The ship's been going down. I've been trying to avoid it. I can only put the Cardinals so low in my power rankings because they have players like Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. But they're bad. And Adam Wainwright, you're 2 wins away from 200 career wins, which would be a big feather in your cap, trying to get into Cooperstown one day. It's a pitcher that's been very good his whole career, but not quite dominant. And Adam Wainwright, you just have to go down with the ship. And I think the Cardinals faithful are going to be behind you in that. I hope that he gets the combination of pitching well enough and getting enough run support from this hot and cold offense that he gets his 200 wins. But it's really sad. I feel bad for Wainwright. He has had plenty of problems going forward, but it is a real shame that his final season has not been quite as magical as we've seen with Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina last season. Really a shame. I hope that you Cardinals fans appreciate Waino while you still got him. I hope that he turns things around, has an amazing second half like Albert Pujols, goes out with his 200th win, that round number that he was looking for like Pujols did with 700. And I hope all of you who've been gracious enough to support me, I see a few of you in the chat, have an amazing holiday weekend. 4th of July. This country's got a lot of flaws, but we're very lucky to have been born into it. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow for more baseball content, hit me up on Twitter at DominicMana44 or on TikTok at Solo Shot Sports. And I will catch you guys next Solo Shot Saturday. Peace.